All right, welcome to the College Game Day podcast. It is Monday, September 29th. I am Dan Wetzel. Neither Reese Davis nor Pete Thamel is here. They are at the wedding, or they were at the wedding of Reese's daughter last night in Connecticut. I am joined instead by two of my colleagues here at ESPN, Ryan McGee and Max Olson. Reliable sources have told me that the wedding went off quite well. And that Reese, much as he does at the start of every Game Day episode, did a scene setter for this nuptial between Elizabeth, his daughter, graduated from NYU, and Nate, his new son-in-law of Colorado. Set it up like a broadcast. So we congratulate the couple as well as Reese and his wife Lee and everyone involved. Additionally, the reception, according to sources, was so great, Reese was seen drinking a second glass of whole milk. to put this down. Needless to say,
did you hear?
He's got better things. He's got to sleep that off.
Suits for this one, Dan.
They may have stayed in the suits. Was it a whiteout? We don't know that. We'll have more. He's got better things to do this morning than to talk to some jackwagon like myself. So you guys get it. But a quick reminder: please download the podcast wherever you prefer to get your podcasts, or better yet, subscribe so you never miss a single episode, especially when they get it back. We're going to talk about a lot of the action from last weekend, but I wanted to kind of hit me over the weekend, guys, whether from the world's quickest field storming in Charlottesville on Friday to the last call, last interception of the weekend by BYU over Colorado. This was epic. This was an epic weekend, and I feel this has been an epic season. And it's a fear of recency bias, but it's kind of been building. And what I have seen of late is whether that was the plan or not, NIL, revenue sharing, college football playoff, and the transfer portal, the much hated transfer portal, has done an incredible job of spreading the talent around this country. College football is more competitive and more competitively balanced, which means not only do we have like 10 teams that could win the SEC this year right now, we also just have more competitive games. We have more teams that can get good really quick. We have more good quarterback play all over the country. And so I am positing a theory that college football has never been better, that this is the best college football has ever been played. It is the best and most interesting this sport is. It is the most competitive and competitively balanced as the sport is, no matter what you heard during a congressional hearing or some coach whining during media days, or what the administrators tell you, or the commercials saying Congress has got to do something. This is the best the sport has ever been. Ryan, I will start with you. Where am I wrong? How am I wrong? What do you think?
I don't disagree with you. It's funny because now, all right, so we're getting ready for Vandy and Alabama this weekend. That's where game day will be. And I think about the game a year ago when Diego Pavia kind of introduced himself to the nation and Vanderbilt upset Alabama. And I think about something that Chris Doering said, and I've quoted this on the show before. And that game was on the SEC Network. And the post-game studio show, they're just watching the Vandy crowd. The opposite, by the way, of the Virginia field storming. This is the most polite field storming of all time. They just all kind of helped each other down the stairs and walked out onto the field. But as they tore the goalpost down, I remember Chris Doering said, "We have entered a new era of the game where I don't know that the great teams are that great, but I know that the bad teams aren't that bad." And I think about that a lot. And there's something to be said for that. I mean, it is the fact that we always complain, and as we all did our history, the three of us, we all did our research for CFB 150, right, back in 2019. What you kind of learned was the same programs that were good in 1930 were good in 1970 and were good in 2019. But now at least more teams are in the conversation. I mean, we're in October now. And we're talking about a lot of football teams. And the biggest complaint and the reason people wanted the CFP to expand and all those things was, well, I need to know if I'm an Appalachian State grad that I have a chance to have somewhere in the postseason. Or, not even that, if I'm an Ole Miss grad, right? Or if I'm an Arizona State grad, I need to know I have somewhere in the postseason. It's not just always the same. It's not always Clemson versus Alabama, or it's not always, Georgia versus whoever. And so, yeah, I dig it. And as sports writers, what do we want? We want chaos. That's why we still worship at the altar of 2007. And I want that every year. And so now, I was at Oklahoma Auburn 2 weekends ago and talked to Brent Venables about this. And he was about to play an Auburn team that had his former quarterback. And then he was coaching a team with a quarterback that came from Washington State that was burning to the ground because of the Pac-12 situation. That's why the transfer portal is great, because you're not just going to sit there for 4 years and watch three other guys who are 5-stars play while you don't ever get to play and your football life ends. Now you have another chance, whether you're going to make a lot of money or not. And so I'm here for it. And I like for as many teams to be in the conversation as possible. And that's where we are. So no, I don't disagree with you at all.
Dan, I remember you waged this war of ideas before the 12-team playoff about, man, what if this cheapens the regular season? What if people don't care as much? What if the rivalry games don't matter as much? I will tell you guys, as I was sitting in the press box in State College, Pennsylvania, as that game went to overtime and 110,000 people are losing their minds, I didn't sit there saying, this does nothing for me because what if these teams play again?
Right.
I think when you get swept up in the moment of it and you don't ever think like, they might play in Indy and then, man, they might play in the first round. Who knows? Like this is just one of, this doesn't matter as much. I think that I'm totally with you on this. I think you're right, Ryan. Like, I think we saw Virginia Texas Tech and LSU and some of these got a lot of attention for how much money they spent. Like Virginia went all in this offseason, and it is paying off. Like Vanderbilt did it 2 years ago. It is still paying off. Mississippi State brought in 30-plus players this offseason, and they got it right. Like I love the unpredictability of as we get into fall camp now each year, and you're flipping through our Phil Steele, we don't know who's going to be good and who's going to be that team that somehow goes 3-9 and we just didn't see it coming at all. I think that unpredictability is a lot of fun. And I would say too, Dan, I think there's another factor to this, like a macro factor that's kind of playing into all this. I think we're kind of in, I guess I'd call it an urgency era too. And you saw Oklahoma State's AD Chad Weiberg acknowledge this last week in his press conference after firing Mike Gundy. Like he pointed out, look, everybody knows, TV deals come up at the end of the decade, and that's when movement happens. That's when realignment happens. And so these administrators know they have to get their act together as soon as possible. There are obviously schools that want to be in the Big Ten, that want to be in the SEC, that want to be perceived as being worthy of being in those conferences. And so then you're also in ACC, you're heading towards unequal revenue sharing. So if you're bad, it's really going to cost you here going forward. It's just, it's not a good time to be average. It's, you can flip a roster like Kurt Signetti or Kenny Dillingham has. You can unlock this ambition now that's a little bit more impatient. So I think there just aren't as many Power 4 programs right now that are we're bad, but it's fine.
Yeah, you cannot rest on your laurels on this. And the transfer portal, and this is why, this is what scares me about the administrations of these places, is that everything they said was that this would make everything worse, right? Alabama will get all the players, the transfer portal, just everyone will go to Alabama or Georgia. There was already, everyone was at Alabama and Georgia. We'd go into seasons with 3 teams that could win the national title. And, or there were SEC seasons where you'd be like, okay, Florida's on one side, Alabama's on the other. They're going to meet up 8 weeks from now in Atlanta, unless something crazy happens. Now, great win, Alabama, but you got to go to Vandy, and then you got or they're home for Vandy, then they're at Missouri, and then they got a whole, nothing goes well. To talk about that Oregon game, nobody at the idea that people would not care who won a football game, who came up with this theory? Have they ever watched a football game? This is football. That scene, you take Saturday night. Dante Moore, okay, now here's a kid who goes to UCLA, and his coach bails on him. Chip Kelly leaves, right? In the past, he's kind of stuck on for 2 years, and this program is disintegrating. It's none of it's his fault. He gets the transfer, no penalty, nobody thinks, and everyone's more active looking for guys now. That's also part of it. So he transfers. Now he's at this game that supposedly doesn't matter. Is he a mercenary guy trying to make all this money at Oregon? He doesn't care. I watched him in the post game of he was talking to the Big Ten Network after, and he cried. He didn't really cry. He just it was overcome with emotion. He had held together everything during the game. And then by the post game, he was just out, and he's basically just crying in this interview because winning this game meant so much for him. None of the stuff that they said was going to happen. Oh, the team wouldn't care because one guy's making more money than another guy. All this stuff, none of it is played out. The sport is fascinating. Like you said, the urgency. Hey, Mississippi State, you had a couple bad years, terrible years. Good now. Almost beat Tennessee in overtime. Anything can happen in this sport right now. And I just think it's so much more interesting. And what scares me is the people that told us all these things were going to be bad and were 180 degrees wrong are still trying to put things in place, either to curb this back or come up with some other harebrained idea that I don't really trust their judgment.
Well, ultimately, it's going to be about protecting their deal. And I'm sorry, so the same programs that sat in these rooms, because one of the great myths about the NCAA is that the NCAA is writing the rules. They're not. The inmates run the asylum. The NCAA enforces the rules, and no one's going to argue about they struggle with that from time to time, right? But the membership writes the policy. And they all sat in a room, the big schools did, and they were like, all right, you know what? If we do this transfer portal thing, and I'm talking about the teams you were just talking about that were always playing for national championship, we can go get whoever we want because we're who we are. It never dawned on them that, that other 5-star who's not playing might leave them and go to Mississippi State or go to Arizona State or go to Ole Miss or go to wherever. And that's exactly what's happened. And now there's hope. There's hope in Vanderbilt's good at football, like the best they've been at football in 100 years. And why is that? Because the transfer portal allowed them to bring in a lot of guys all at once. I mean, the New Mexico State, mass transit. And, if you're Mississippi State, you can go shopping, but you have to be willing to do that. And if you're not, fine. Listen, I was out of Oregon State 2 weekends ago leading into the Civil War, and they've kind of thrown their hands up. Like, we don't know what we're going to do. And I get it. I totally get it 100%. But, and all these Lane Kiffin people at Ole Miss, after we ran our documentary E60 last week, and they're all like, well, what can we do to keep him from leaving? I'm like, well, you can just keep doing what you're doing right now, which is committing to it. So you still have to commit to it. But now more programs have the ability to commit to it. So, yeah, to your point, Dan, the problem is the people who had the power are going to do everything and somehow let that power slip away. And heaven forbid, let the student athletes grab some of that power. They're going to do whatever they can to try to get some of that back, especially when they're losing to Vanderbilt or they're losing to Mississippi State or they're losing to Arizona State or these teams they're used to just pushing around all those years. And so, but yeah, the story, Joey Aguilar at Tennessee, the stories of the guys who have gotten a second life of their career, they deserve that. I mean, it's you're putting them on a shelf just because of whatever was never fair, and it was never going to be fair. And that's what it was about. It was about, the people with the power maintaining their power, and they went to sleep at the wheel for a minute, and now they're freaking out.
Yeah, I think we all would have had a lot more respect for Joe Burrow if he had just stayed at Ohio State and finished his degree and been a good backup to Dwayne Haskins. And
he'd be a great lawyer. He'd be a great lawyer in Cincinnati right now, right? Yeah,
that's right. But there's so many of those, right? I mean, you look at the SEC, and we'll get to them, but okay, Trinidad Chambliss, Diego Pavia, Joey Aguilar, even John Mateer. 2 years ago, the people in their life are probably telling them, dude, there's no way you're playing the SEC. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
No agents steering you there, right? We're not going to be able to do that. And those guys, those underdogs are all on top right now while these really hyped guys are struggling. I think it's that piece of it's really fun. And now that we're in revenue sharing too, I'll tell you guys, the economics of this are getting a little bit tougher, even for the teams at the top. We're used to all the blue chip top 100 recruits. Oh yeah, they're all going to the same 6 schools and stuff like that. Now they are spreading out more. And if you're at a Georgia or an Alabama and you've got these, blue chip guys that aren't playing, someone else can pay that guy $500,000, right? I mean, you can't just sort of keep them on the bench and let them marinate for 3 years. That doesn't work anymore. And so that kid's going to go play, whether it's SEC or another conference. Those guys are going to move on after their freshman year now and go find somewhere where they can start. When you have this many schools that have more money now and are feel like they have to spend the money, the player movement is just crazier than ever. Even as we don't, there's no contracts. You put stuff in writing right now, but nobody's staying put. So until that stuff changes, we're going to continue to see this chaos.
Well, and the ones that want to stay, Dan, still stay. Like Ty Simpson wanted to stay, and he waited out. Garrett Nussmeier wanted to stay, and he waited it out. So the point is now you have a choice. You don't have to leave. But you can still do it old school if you want to do it old school and wait it out while the other guys play and get your one big year in and hope that you play like everyone thought you would. But there's still plenty of those stories. I go in his locker room. We go in his locker rooms every week, all three of us. There's still plenty of seniors in the room. There's still plenty of 22-year-olds in the room. It's not like this is all happening with all 100 players every weekend or every year. And so those stories still exist. And there's also a lot of failures of guys who transfer. They weren't very good at the first school, and they probably won't be very good at the next school. But there's a hell of a lot more stories about guys that turned their careers and lives and got to play football some more than we had before, because before there were zero.
Yeah, they demonized the transfer, right? They're quitters. They're looking for money, all this stuff, not loyal. Maybe they're just building their way up, whether it's Trinidad Chambliss getting a chance to go to the SEC, or it's Chandler Morris of Virginia, right? He goes to Oklahoma. He's not really good enough. Doesn't pan out. Goes to TCU. Doesn't pan out. He's kind of the backup. He goes to North Texas, gets his game together, starts playing the way they thought he would as a highly regarded high school recruit. Now he's at Virginia, and we all get entertained. Virginia's better. A Friday night game's more competitive. Everyone's having a good time about it, except for maybe Florida State. But that's a win, right? And to your point on the seniors, there used to be 120 kids a year would go early to the NFL. Now it's down to 50, 60 kids a year. And a bunch of those are guaranteed first rounders. So a lot of guys are staying. So I just think the overall quality of the sport is better. I don't like, I hate what happened to Washington State, Oregon State. I wish the Pac-12 was still in existence. I think it would be better for UCLA and USC, but not all of it is great. But the idea that this sport is in doomsday and all of that is just completely wrong. And Max, you were at the great scene in State College Saturday night. What was it like? What are your thoughts on what happened there? Obviously Oregon wins it in double overtime. They really, at one point it looked really, is going to be really ugly for Penn State. The 17-3, this looks like another just no show really by Penn State. Their defense was doing well, but and they rally back. The place must have been just crazy in the fourth quarter and overtime, but in the end, Ducks win. What was it like there after? What was going on?
Well, you guys know we've been to a lot of stadiums over the years, and you can kind of take that stuff for granted. That was that was my first time at Penn State, and one of those where I'm like that dad now who's like taking videos to go home and show my family, show my kid, hey, look at this, look at all these people. It was unbelievable scene. And I thought there was at 17-3 with the way that game was flowing. Thought no chance Penn State comes back in that game. So just an incredible comeback by Drew Aller and Andy Kolnicki and the stuff they came up with when they got desperate there. I talked with someone in Oregon in the preseason who their take was like, yeah, I mean, on paper we love this team, but you got to play a few games just to kind of find out what we really got at some of these spots, like running back, wide receiver. They felt really confident in Dante going into the year. And you heard Dan Lanning say afterward, feel like he's playing like the best quarterback in college football right now. I was just so impressed by the way. I mean, he didn't take a sack. He didn't turn it over. That's just one of those games where one bad thing happens and Penn State wins that game. It was just that intensive environment. I like that contrast at the end too. Dante Moore, ready to cry. It looks like he just finished the Boston Marathon, and Dan Lanning was vibrating. He looked like he was on a heater in Vegas and ready to, hey, let's play another one right now. You know what I mean? He was. He loves the big game. And it's funny, it's easy to forget Dan Lanning's only his fourth year as a head coach. And he's gone through some big ones that they didn't win early. Unbelievably impressive. Just the way, what he does for that team and their mindset, their mentality, their preparation for games like this. But I'll tell you guys, like, I know that everyone reverts to, hey, here's James Franklin's record against top 10 teams, all that stuff. Man, I don't know that I would have dropped Penn State down to 7. Like, I don't think, like, if Ohio State had been playing in that stadium on Saturday night, I think it would have been a close game. I honestly do. I think Penn State would have had a chance to win. I think the way that they played defense for throughout that game, Oregon had to earn every first down at every point in that game. And I think that you saw the Jim Knowles effect already. I think Penn State is going to stay in this thing. It's easy to be down on Aller. It's easy to talk about what about Bo Prabula and what if they had him. But I think that defense gives them a chance against anybody.
Yeah, it's funny. I thought a lot about the James Franklin thing, and I think that everything that's said about him certainly applies to the first 3 quarters of that stat, the 1 and whatever it is now. But I don't think it applies.
It's like 4 and 21, I think now.
But to me, it doesn't apply to the last couple of years. It just doesn't. I mean, you won 2 playoff games, right? And it's not like you came within literally a hand of at least playing for another overtime. This idea of it's like he's going into these games and just laying eggs and losing by 3 touchdowns or whatever. But again, I think it totally applied to the first however many years of his tenure there. But I don't think it applies to the last couple. Now, you give him credit. I mean, he went from, he said this is truth. He said narrative and then he rewound, and I give him credit for that. But it's not. Yeah, I'm with you. The drop surprised me, but I think the drop is a victim of that narrative. It is. I think you all hell here. To quote the great Harry Gant from Stroker Ace, there's a NASCAR reference for you, Max. Oh hell, here we go again. You definitely. It's just like why we're not talking about Diego Pavia as everyone's leading Heisman candidate because he plays at Vanderbilt. I mean, those things still attach themselves to this, and it's the good news is you have a chance to correct that if you're Penn State. But that atmosphere, I've been to one whiteout, and I kind of went in with my skeptical sports writer glasses, and within 5 minutes, I was like, "Oh, okay, no, I've never seen anything like this, and I've never seen anything like it before or since."
Yeah, I've been to 2 of them and they were incredible. I mean, it just, like I said, it's college football's Eiffel Tower. Like you got to go once in your life and see it or something like that. Like it is, and it ain't easy to do, but because they only do 1 a year, and but it was a great scene. Sometimes I wonder, and I wondered in this game if the pregame hype and the pregame atmosphere and the early atmosphere actually just drains a team. Like they certainly get an advantage from that noise, but is it just almost too much? And they had such a slow start. I agree with you with Penn State. They do everything right as a program, and eventually you break through. I guess I've covered a million of these. I was at an Ohio State game a couple of years ago, Penn State, Ohio State, and he did the same narrative thing. Well, it's actually the truth. It does sound like a record. I feel for the Penn State fans, but when you're losing in double OT. Certainly you need Aller not to throw a pick on first down, but you're as close can be. And they're going to get Ohio State at Ohio State. The Indiana will probably be in the top 10. We'll see. But they're in the top 10 right now, and they come to but I don't think win one of them really changes anything. You've got to win the title. It's a little like Harbaugh was. The Harbaugh had much more of an accomplished, but like Harbaugh was losing to Ohio State and people were like, oh, he's the worst coach. He's a fraud. And I mean, he lost a couple of those games really close, and it's sort of like one bounce of the ball. And then eventually it gets kind of rolling with them. And it's like, yeah, Jim Harbaugh is a pretty good coach. He's a great coach at every step of the way.
Well, keep in mind also, Oregon made Oklahoma State look like an FCS team.
Yeah.
Oregon's got a freshman wide receiver. They got freshman running backs. Like they're still not even a finished product here. I think there's totally an argument that they're the best team in the country right now, or a team that is right there with Ohio State. I don't know. I feel like Penn State played them close, and you go to all the psychological stuff of the Franklin era and all that. But like, man, if they go for 2 at the end of regulation, you're talking about James Franklin finally did it, and maybe Penn State should be number 1 and all that. So I don't think they're that far off. But it is, it does have that Groundhog Day feeling of like it's one of those seasons where Ohio State and Indiana now are the only games that matter.
It's a rough drive out of there too for those fans. It's amazing they're as positive as they generally are, because like you're driving for hours at midnight,
Yeah.
trying to get out of that little town after another loss.
The Harrisburg. You talking about the Harrisburg Airport drive at 2 a.m.? Yeah, we've all done that.
Tough one. Yeah, it's a tough one. But I love the mental toughness that Oregon has. They don't just have talent, man. You got to be mentally tough to walk in there and do what they did, and they've shown that. They are a heck of a program right now. Alabama, Georgia played, and it took 5 minutes to get to it. It's pretty amazing, but it was a classic, right? Physical, and it was like everything we saw from Alabama to start the season of Florida State, where they just kind of looked non-competitive at times physically and maybe even with the effort. They had it on Saturday night. And thing I know, Kirby Smart's really, really good unless he's playing Alabama. And Kalen DeBoer hasn't been really, really good unless he's playing Georgia. And so that kind of played out. Huge win for the Tide. I don't want to overreact to that the same way I don't want to overreact to Penn State, Oregon. The thing about, as I mentioned earlier, you got Vanderbilt for Alabama. It's like, well, Alabama's back. Like, okay, maybe, but they got Vanderbilt. They're at Missouri. They get Tennessee. They're at South Carolina. Then they got LSU and Oklahoma. Now a bunch of those are at home, but let's see how this plays out. Which Alabama are we going to get and can consistently do this? I got to imagine a lot of ice tubs going down in Tuscaloosa this week. Ryan? Yeah,
and we were there for Marty McGee on Saturday morning, and it was interesting talking to the Alabama guys, and DeBoer's kind of feeling it right now. And a year ago, he had a lot to process. And there was a lot going on. He didn't have his OC, and a lot of guys had left. And obviously, you're taking over that team. I asked him last year about what's it like when you walk into if you guys have been there, you walk into the football building, and there are these giant, like bronze heads, and it's Wallace Wade and Bear Bryant and Gene Stallings and Nick Saban. And I asked DeBoer, I said, how do you deal with that? He goes, I go in through the back door. He said it took me a little while to figure that out. You just don't walk in past them, right? But it's taken him a minute. But even the play calling, even on special teams, you could see a guy that was feeling it a little bit. And the reality is Georgia adjusted, give him credit for the second half. But what Alabama did in the first half was enough to win. But that was a big one. And, we're talking about the narrative about James Franklin, and Smart, and rightfully so, was a little chippy when it inevitably came up in the post-game press conference about, 1-7 now career against Alabama. And he's like, well, what's everyone else's record against them? And it's a fair question. Yeah. But you're right. But if it feels like DeBoer is getting his roots in the ground now. Now we'll see. But to your point, the players told us point blank. Marty went down there middle of last week, and Ryan Williams was like, we just thought we'd skate through the Florida State game. Like we just weren't. Yeah. He said the game plan was there. We as players weren't ready, and they were ready for Georgia on Saturday night. So you give them credit for that. But the schedule is what it is. I had a 2-stadium day on Saturday. I started the day at Georgia. I ended the night at South Carolina because my daughter's in school, and I surprised her there for Parents Weekend or whatever. But that's going to be a really tough place to play when Alabama rolls in there a month from now. South Carolina's really, really good, when they want to be good. And so, yeah, there's no way they're not going to lose another game. It's just a question of where it's going to be and how much that Florida State albatross is going to bother them. And but yeah, I give DeBoer credit. He knew what that job was when he took it. And I remember we were at the Iron Bowl last year. We had him on the show, and he looked like he just was kind of ready for it to be over with. And he doesn't look like that anymore. Like he looks like he's energized, and they certainly played like it on Saturday.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see here on Monday if Legend is calling into Feinbaum and saying, you know what, I'm coming around on this Kalen DeBoer guy. I don't think we don't necessarily have to get divorced. Like maybe we could let this kind of
funny how that works.
Kind of play out a little bit. And look, I think probably at this point, I had to guess that roster's probably still 60-70% Saban recruits. Yep. I would think. But I think a game like this continues to create confidence that like Kalen DeBoer's way could work at Alabama. And like if you have just like a tiny bit of patience and expect that, hey, they're going to be in some close ones here still. Like I think that one gives you a lot of hope. And you mentioned it, Ryan, but like You want to talk about like Kalen, DeBoer, Stella gets his groove back. I think the big thing, he's got his offense coordinator back. I think Ryan Grubb, just exceptional job against Georgia. I love the way they closed that one with the sprint out, turn around, throw the screen to the running back. Like you saw that creativity with Michael Penix at Washington, and you're seeing it now with Ty Simpson. Like, man, that kid can sling it, and he was making some tight window throws against a very talented defense. I think that you leave Alabama for dead off one game, but there's no question. I think that this thing is turned back around.
The Caden Proctor screen pass is going to be copied all over. Like every big guy in the country is knocking on the offense coordinator.
They're hitting the jugs machine on Monday, right?
Right.
Yeah, right. Look at Coach. I can do this. We've seen Penei Sewell get used sometimes. You see it sometimes in the NFL, but that everyone's going. That play will be used often. Before we talk about the SEC as a whole, Ole Miss. Ryan, you had the Lane Kiffin E60 last week. It was terrific. If you haven't seen it, watch it. Really compelling. Lane is always entertaining, insightful, all of that. But this game, okay, they get LSU, and this is Lane. Talk about in his bag. I mean, everything. He's trolling pregame, all week, postgame. We get the news break, the news alert via the Instagram that his daughter Landry is dating Whit Weeks, the star linebacker of LSU. Like, what is going on there? I don't know. And
Dan, you know all about hard launches, right? I mean,
hard launch.
Yeah, no, I did that.
Yes, this is the hard launch. Obviously, they've been going out. But
that fell under the very frequent me texting my daughter, going, "What the hell? What is this?" I do that. A lot dealing with college kids.
Well, yeah. And then, then it's like, the hard launch is on Instagram, but then there was a video on TikTok where she drives to see. I mean, you gotta really up your game on all this stuff. There's a lot going on. Phil Steele he's missing some stuff now. I'm sorry, Phil, love you, but where is all this? So this big thing comes in. Lane says during the week, everyone's kidding. Like, this guy's dating your daughter. Like, he says, take the over. He's going to probably violate some laws. I don't know. So great. Then who's she going to root for? And so she does all this stuff. She had like an LSU t-shirt, but then she didn't. Then she had this dress, but that had number 40, which is Whit Weeks' number. But then she showed up at the stadium and there was no number. And I'm going down. I'm tired. Okay. I don't want to be researching this stuff. Weeks goes with 10 tackles, a fumble recovery, and threw up on himself in the middle of the game. Gordie Howe hat trick. Either the best thing to do in front of your girlfriend or the worst. I don't know. He's the one with the girlfriend. Ole Miss wins 20-13. Lane's got a kid from Ferris State who might win the Heisman. Afterwards, he does even more trolling. Says, I got to find out if I take the old. Can anyone ask Brian Kelly if the run game's any good yet? Are we allowed to do that? Because they was terrible, 57. What, Ryan? These are your people. What is going on with the Kiffin family? Please explain this all to me. You know all of them.
God bless them. And I told Landry and Lane both that I appreciated them. Like, it was like I remember my daughter used to watch Hannah Montana with Miley Cyrus back in the day on Disney Channel. And there was an episode where the publicists wanted Hannah Montana and this actor to fake like they were dating to promote some movie they were doing. And I was like, That's what it felt like. When I said, because we got that E60 on Wednesday night and all that dropped on Monday about Landry, I was like, thank y'all. I'll take whatever I get. Because she was a huge part of the documentary. So in case you were wondering if this is Lane Kiffin's daughter, if you see the documentary, and we put the clip out before that, the reason he's still there and not at Auburn is because she had just moved there for her senior year of high school. It was just the two of them living in the house. And she, when all this rumors going around, he's going to leave for Auburn midseason, she's like, she and her friends put together a slideshow presentation and set it to the one sad country music song they knew would make him cry, and ambushed him in his office. So yes, this is Lane Kiffin's daughter, whether she lived with him most of her life or not. And the whole social media stuff this week was great. But yeah, this is why the Magnolia Bowl, like, if you know, but nationally, I don't think people appreciate how bonkers this thing is. And it's always been weird. And they hate each other. And I mean, I think that Reese said it on the podcast last week. They end their fight songs not yelling at Alabama or yelling at Mississippi State by yelling at each other. And so it was perfect. And then what a gigantic win. And Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss do their best work when people don't think they're there yet. And I said it all week long. They're ahead of schedule. Man, they're undefeated, but they're ahead of schedule. LSU's where we thought they should be, but Ole Miss is. And now there sits Ole Miss. They're still undefeated, and LSU isn't. And Brian Kelly's face gets redder every week. Like that vein in this forehead is getting taller and taller every week, Max. And it's, welcome to October.
I just picture if you had to explain the hard launch and all of this stuff to Coach Saban ahead of a big week.
Yes.
Imagine the eye roll there, McGee, and the stack of distractions. That's Lane, man. He lives in it. He loves it. He's on Twitter retweeting all of it, right? I think I do want to ask you, Ryan, because you got aggregated a little bit last week, right? For talking about a dinner at Scott Strickland's house, and
whatever. So all right, so I went on the Florida radio show and told this story that Paul Feinbaum and I have told. I saw Paul on Friday when we got to Georgia, and Paul's like, we've told that story on my show 10 times. I go, yeah. So clearly no one's listening to your show. All right, so the story is that because I co-host a show on the SEC network, a lot of times when we go into towns, which by the way we're going to Gainesville this weekend, so this will probably come up. We sometimes have these mandated dinners that we go to. And we had this dinner at Scott Strickland's house. I think Scott's a great guy and has done, catches a lot of arrows, but I think he's done a pretty good job. And
just won the national title in basketball.
Yeah, and at these dinners, there's always a lot of, very, very important people wearing Technicolor jackets with gray hair that, donate a lot of money. And this was the Texas A&M game, week 3. We'd been there weeks 1 and 3. They got hammered by Miami week 1. They were going to lose to A&M on week 3. And a lot of these boosters were coming up to us and saying, me and Paul, and saying, hey, just so you know, after we lose to A&M on Saturday, we'll have Lane Kiffin in here by the middle of October. Like, multiple people said it. And, of course, as we know now, yes, they lost to A&M. They didn't lose much the rest of the year. And Billy Napier turned it around. And so Paul and I, we had just told that story on his show the Friday before, and when we were talking about the Lane Kiffin thing. So that story was regurgitated by me, and because I thought everyone at this point had heard it, and so that caught some Twitter kindling. I woke up the next morning, and everybody in Florida is texting me. I'm like, what are you talking about? And so yes, the question was, do you think that would Lane Kiffin leave Ole Miss? I think Lane Kiffin would leave Ole Miss if Tuscaloosa called. People in Gainesville are convinced that if they call, he'll leave. And for folks that don't know, his ex-wife, Layla, who now lives in Oxford, and they're hanging out all the time, her dad was the legendary quarterbacks coach during the Steve Spurrier years. So there are ties to Florida. But I don't know that he'll leave Oxford because, as you saw on the doc, he's really happy. Like, why do you mess with happy? And so the Florida people don't want to hear that. And I look forward to going to Gainesville this weekend because all those people in the Technicolor jackets and the gray hairs probably waiting at the hotel to say that I had
blown the plane.
That was in confidence. No, it wasn't. It was not in confidence. There were 400 people there.
I bring it up to say, when you talk to personnel people in the sport, they still talk about Lane Kiffin to Florida as if it is some sort of foregone conclusion of like, yeah, that's going to happen, like, period. But I think with this team, like, you know him way better than I do, but like, man, I think it's extremely possible that Ole Miss is too good this year and the timing doesn't make sense. And you kind of have this, one of those kind of years where you're like, why can't we do it here? Like, why would I have to go somewhere else? And you kind of go back to your Tennessee memories of like, wait, why would I bail on this place? Right. Like, I think I think watching this Ole Miss team so far, I never expected this from Trinidad Chambliss, the D2 champion, but man, it's entirely, I don't know, Ryan, you tell me, but like, I think it's entirely possible that by the end of this season, Lane Kiffin's like, oh, that's funny that you'd think I would do that. No, this place
No,
rules.
what I've
Why
told
would I do
people, Dan, it goes back to your point earlier. If the school is willing to commit, and Ole Miss got ahead of the curve on this thing, on NIL, on all of it, and if they continue to promise to commit and continue to commit what they've done up to this point, I'm not sure why you would leave. And don't mess with Happy. Greg McElroy was the one that said it to me. He and I were talking. He's like, "Do you think you would leave?" And he kept saying, "Would he be willing to mess with Happy?" And he messed with Happy one time. And we basically did half of a documentary about him leaving Knoxville. And now he and quite frankly his Layla, his ex-wife, like they think all the time about what would have been like had we stayed. But the one place that would have made him leave was USC. And I think there's one place that he would leave Ole Miss for, and I think it's just at the road in Tuscaloosa. And I don't think they're going to have a job open anytime soon. So I don't know, but I've been wrong on so many of these things so many times, and I might be prisoner of the moment because of the documentary and because of all those things. But again, he is really, really happy, and it's not just football, but man, football is pretty good too. So I'm not sure, Dan. I'm not sure why you would leave at this point, unless it just.
Well, I think it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. This is a different era, and the calculus that you put in on why a coach would keep moving up, right? Coaches hit the transfer portal because, well, if you go to Florida, you get a little bit better recruit than you could at Ole Miss, and then that recruit you could win a national title there, or you can't really compete for a national title at Ole Miss or Missouri or wherever. You can now. You got revenue sharing. There is Ole Miss. They got enough guys. Is it maybe a little easier at Florida? Maybe not. Maybe not, because you've got control. This is a lot more like an NFL job now. You don't see guys switch jobs in the NFL. You get a head coaching job and you ride it because you could be Liam Cohen at Jacksonville, right? Maybe like the under resource, and you're just as good as the Cowboys, you can win it. Might be better off than being the Cowboys coach, right? And so, there are 10 teams in the SEC in the top 20 this week, in the top 19. We could make a case. We're not going to do it because we don't have time, but it'll take hours. But I can make a case for 10 different teams to win the SEC this year. It's not like it used to be where you had to try to just climb one more rung of a ladder. You can make Ole Miss, you can make Missouri, you can make Vandy, you can make all sorts of ones into something that can win it all. I feel the same way. I was arguing this last week about Kirk Cignetti. Everyone's like, well, he's going to leave Indiana. Why? Why is he going to leave Indiana? They're paying him $9 million. He's got boosters that can pay the other guys. He's got control. The school's going to full revenue share. Like, why has he got to leave Indiana? It doesn't mean you wouldn't maybe go if Ohio State or, like you said, some school that you really wanted. But this idea you just got to jump because you're the coach, the only reason that stuff exists is you used to have to be good 30, 50, 80 years ago to be good now. Not anymore. It's an active dollar that you're spending on these players, and it's a lot more like the NFL where all these jobs can be great.
And again, messing with Happy, right? And listen, I want to be clear about this. I love going to Gainesville. I'm excited to get into this weekend. I mean, it's the swamp is the swamp. I mean, it's awesome. But that job, it's like those pictures you see of presidents of the United States, what they look like on their first day on the job and what they look like when they left after 4 years or 8 years. They've aged 50 years. That job is really, really difficult. It damn near killed Urban Meyer to hear him talk about it, right? And Steve Spurrier, as much as he loves it, still has an office in the building, will tell you it got really, really difficult. And, don't even get started on Ron Zook and Will Muschamp. They were like the guy at the end of that Indiana Jones movie who drank from the wrong cup and aged like 500 years in like 30 seconds or whatever it is. It's a difficult place to coach because their expectation level, and rightfully so, is as high as it is. I remember having a conversation with David Cutcliffe at Duke. And they had just played in the Peach Bowl and should have beaten Texas A&M, but he had them rolling, right? I mean, that's when he had Duke going for the most wins they'd had since Spurrier was there, or since Wallace Wade or whatever back in the day. And he said, if I win 8 games a year here, and he goes, and my family loves it. He said, we love living here. He goes, they'll put a statue of me out front. And he goes, I did the exact same thing at Ole Miss and got fired. So don't if you're happy. there is something to be said for that. And so one day you might wake up and you're getting fired on the tarmac and you're wondering, well, damn, what if I'd have stayed where I was? Because we had it going pretty good, right? And so it's an interesting crossroads for all of these guys. And there's a lot, but you also, that's why you get the money, right? If you don't want to have that, don't take the checks. But that's the life they sign on for. But it is a fascinating psychological study to me.
Yeah, going to be interesting. Gentlemen, I don't know about you guys. I'm not a motorcycle guy. I think they're cool. I would have liked to have I just never got into motorcycles. I don't know Harley or anything like that. Just they look fun, but I don't have it. But I know a couple things about motorcycle safety. One is you wear your helmet all times, right? And number two, if you got to really pay attention if you're riding down Arkansas Highway 16 near the city of Crosses, and you happen to have a 25-year-old former volleyball player on the back, because you can just skid off the road and end up in a ditch like nothing. Hey, Bobby Petrino is back, guys. Ugh. Bobby Petrino is back as the head coach of the Arkansas Razorbacks. The Hogs fired all-time good guy Sam Pittman over the weekend after just a Notre Dame beatdown of the Razorbacks. Petrino's just the interim coach, but you can ask the Falcons. That's always the case with Petrino. Of course, he led the Hogs to consecutive 10-win seasons back in 2010 and 2011 before that fateful motorcycle accident left them in a classic neck brace picture press conference, broken ribs and out of work. This may, if there are younger listeners, back then, a 51-year-old college coach dating a 25-year-old that he worked with was a fireable scandal. Now it's half a Belichick. You can just go right. I'm here for Petrino 2.0. I hope he gets this job full time. Hogs are better with him. Should we have seen this coming, Max? Was this just inevitable that Bobby Petrino would be back, considering the lunacy of this sport? And what's up with the Hogs? What can they do?
This feels a little bit, I don't know if you guys are big Office guys, but this reminds me of, when Dwight Schrute is asking Kathy Bates to consider him as manager, and she reminds him that last time he was acting manager, he discharged a gun in the office. And that was a bit of a hurdle he had to overcome to get the job again. Never say never, right? I mean, last year I remember getting asked on a radio show, "Hey, what do you think about this talk of Bill Belichick to North Carolina?" And I just smart ass response was just like, "Yeah, I don't know. I don't think UNC is going to hire a 73-year-old head coach to replace Mac Brown." But I was wrong. I was wrong. So I mean, it is objectively funny that I don't know that I've heard of an idea this foolish since Louisville tried to give a guy named Bobby Petrino a second chance as head coach. Although you should note, they got 4 pretty good years out of that before it slid with 2-8 in the final year. What do you think, McGee? I know how highly he thought of Pittman, and what how much he loved that place. Did you see this coming? Did you see that Petrino is going to take a run at this?
Yeah, I mean, and so did Sam. I mean, when he was named, when Petrino was named offensive coordinator, it was that became the immediate narrative around there. I went to talk to the Little Rock Touchdown Club, and we all do those speeches, right? And you get to the Q&A, and this is the start of the season a year ago, and the first 5 questions were all about Petrino being head coach one day, and when is Sam Pittman going to lose his job? I'm like, well, let him play some damn games first, right? And I but to your point, I tweeted this on Sunday night. Sam Pittman, I don't know anyone that doesn't like him. I really don't. And I hope that Arkansas fans appreciate. He's a big boy, and again, and he was the first one to say it. One day they're going to tell me they don't want me, and I'll get on the pontoon boat, and I'll be fine, and he'll be fine. And he's a big boy. We all know how this works. But I hope Arkansas fans appreciate that they will never have a head coach that wanted that job more than he did, or that enjoyed that place more than he did. And so that I'm sad for us because we're not going to get him at media days every year anymore. But the Petrino thing's fascinating because we're told incessantly he's not the person he used to be, and that's fine. Just football wise, though, I like Taylor Green. I think he has the potential to be really, really good. They scored 13 points against Notre Dame. I mean, the focus has been the defense is bad or whatever, but Petrino's the offensive genius. They're not scoring. So I'm curious to see. We already have administrative questions about him just based on, what had happened in the past. Maybe as head coach, the offense will be more wide open. I have no idea, but the offense hasn't done anything to this point with a really, really talented quarterback that makes me think suddenly they're going to turn it around and win, 6 out of the last, half the schedule. But it's good theater. And by the way, Dan, I give credit where credit's due. That was one of the great segues in the history of this podcast right there. I don't know where you guys are on motorcycles.
Segue king. Smooth like Reese Davis. No, I'm not. Yeah, that would be. He would have done it with much more flair. A little on that Notre Dame game. Notre Dame looked tremendous against Arkansas. Arkansas looked terrible. But the Irish are in a weird spot right now. And they have 2 losses, lose by 3 at Miami, lose by 1 at Texas against Texas A&M. Both those teams are top 5, top 10 right now, wherever you want to rank them. Couldn't be much more impressive. But they got nothing left on this schedule. They got very little on this schedule now that USC lost to Illinois on Saturday. And the Illini come up off the mat from just a historic defeat to Indiana and play a great game. And they really they had a couple fumbles in the red zone. Like they could have beat USC handily. And USC was the last really named team on this Notre Dame schedule. Notre Dame, they beat Purdue, they beat Arkansas, they get Boise State, NC State, USC, they're at BC, Navy, at Pitt, Syracuse, and at Stanford. And with USC falling, and I don't know where Lincoln Riley's program is. I think they're 13-12 the last 25 games. They've got a massive buyout on this guy. This USC does not look like a team that's really capable of competing right now in the Big Ten. I think Illinois is good, but they're just good. They're going to be, 4th, 5th, 6th place team in the league. And you lost that game that was almost handed to you. This is going to be the story of the rest of the season for Notre Dame. Can you get in without a quality win if you just have 2 really good losses? Or is Notre Dame locked out no matter how good this team looks? Max, what do you think?
I do want to say real quick, going back to Taylor Green, he has a chance. I just want to note, he has a chance to go out and be a good stats, bad team Hall of Famer this season. Yeah. He is leading the nation in total offense. If he plays every game this year, he's on pace for 3,000 passing, 1,000 rushing. The last 4 guys who've done that were Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, and Lamar Jackson. So good company, but Notre Dame shut him down totally. And I think there's just the no quality wins is going to be a huge problem. I think we can all see it coming. If USC is impressive against Michigan, maybe they can get back into that top 25. But I think we're probably talking, best case 9-3 for USC. What this probably sets up is, now you saw Marcus Freeman went fake punt up by 29 against Arkansas, right? I think we are going to see them just chasing 50 burgers the rest of the way. And Marcus Freeman trying to establish a narrative of we can't control who's on the schedule. All we can do is be dominant against everybody we got left. And NC State lost to Virginia Tech, Pitt blew it against Louisville, BC's 1-3, Syracuse got spanked by Duke without Steve Angeli. That's all Notre Dame can do is just go for the jugular every week, I suppose.
That fake was I was shocked, but immediately I started thinking about exactly what you're thinking about. That didn't feel like a Marcus Freeman move, but we got it because that felt like someone who thought, let's do this while the nation's looking at us, because I'm not sure if they're going to look at us for a while, And it was, but I'm with you. I think they get in though. I mean, Kirk said it on game day. Herbie did on Saturday morning. If they went out, he thinks they get in, and it'll be enough to make a lot of people angry because they're getting in because of who they are, maybe not versus what they did. But yeah, it's I think they have a chance because you guys, Max, I know you did. Dan, I'm assuming you probably did. Well, we used to do these mock college football playoff selection deals where you sit in the room in Grapevine, Texas, and you got the clipboard and I'm sitting in Condi Rice's seats, everybody, and the computers are there and all that. And I did 3 of those. And the one thing I left the room coming away with was big. There's definitely.
Did you not pass the test the first time? They made you take it 3 times?
Yeah.
It's much like 5th grade for Ryan.
Me and the SAT is what that was. Yeah. But what I came away with, the one common thread through all 3 experiences, and there were 3 very different rooms. There was a sports writer room, and there was an all ESPN room, and then there was an all jock room. It was all analysts. And what I realized leaving the room was there's a big brand bias. There just is. The first thing you kind of did as part of this, Stockholm syndrome experience was, well, let's throw Boise the hell out of here because they're Boise, and now let's have a Notre Dame conversation. And that's real. And so I think that Notre Dame, if they take care of their business and they win big games by a lot of points or whatever, they'll be fine. But it's just, there's definitely a brand bias. And Notre Dame is the biggest brand of all, whether anybody wants to hear it or not. It's a fact. And so I think that will play into their favor, whether the room realizes that's actually what they're doing or not.
This is going to be wild because I think they're a top 10 team. Like, they obviously can compete with anybody, assuming A&M and Miami keep going as they're going. But it's going to be hard when there's a 9-3 team from the SEC that played some gauntlet. And you don't really have that win. All right, we got to go soon. What is anyone got a final parting shot? Remember the old sports reporters? You got a final parting. Anyone got a little parting shot? Max, you want to start?
Sure. How about shout out to North Texas? They're 5-0 for the first time since 1959 after beating South Alabama. Eric Moore has done an awesome job there. They lose starters every year to the portal. They can't afford to keep these guys that shine for them. And every year they just go out and find the next guy. And he's got a pretty impressive history with finding Cam Ward, finding John Mateer. This year it's Drew Mestamaker at quarterback. And I've talked to a few personnel folks who already view him as one of the top G5 guys out there. And he's only a redshirt freshman. So I could see Eric Morris totally being a viable candidate for some of these jobs like Oklahoma State. But I hope North Texas fans enjoy this. I think it's going to be a hell of a race in the American with Memphis and USF and Tulane. And, right now you mentioned this at the top, Dan, I think we got 30 teams that still have a 10% chance or better of getting into the CFP according to FPI. That list includes North Texas. So that would be pretty cool to see.
It's one of my favorite T-shirts, my Mean Green T-shirt that I got. Dan, I was covering a NASCAR race at Texas Motor Speedway. Saw that the Mean Green was home when I went up there. Saw Hugh Freeze at Arkansas State, I think it was. It was a long time ago. We need to take a moment here as a nation and appreciate the latest amazing rivalry trophy.
I knew you were going this
New Mexico, New Mexico State played over the weekend. We've called that the Battle of I-25. They call it the Rio Grande rivalry. Props to New Mexico. Jack Lane threw 4 touchdown passes. New Mexico State had a lead and blew it. But the trophy for this game now is a chili roaster. And it looks like something you could go down to the Home Depot and buy, in the outdoor section. And I have it. It's basically, remember when we were kids and they do the old lottery thing where the letter would if you go to your bingo parlor, when they crank the thing and you reach in, B12 or whatever. That's what this looks like, except this is what you use to roast chili peppers. I have a little tiny version that I use to do vegetables on the grill or whatever on the weekend. But yeah, the chili roaster, it literally looks like they stole it from a tailgate. And New Mexico was jumping up and down in the locker room with this thing when it was over with. And it had chilies in it. So I didn't see anybody throwing any of those down. I don't know how old they were, but yeah, that was brand new. Some local artist came up with this thing, but I'm all for it. I love it's well documented. I love goofy trophies. I don't think this is goofy. I think it's very practical. What I want to know is if you have the chili roaster and it's in your building for a year, that does the trainer's table, do they accidentally, oh damn, we didn't realize this was a trophy. We thought we were roasting chilies for dinner. So, but it's a phenomenal trophy, and I can't wait to see it in person. I'm gonna have to go to New Mexico just for that.
I totally missed this. It's called the Roaster. It's a 30-pound tabletop chili roaster trophy.
And it's a basket. It's just like an aluminum basket with a handle on it, the whole thing.
Well, you absolutely got to cook something like Sunday or Monday on. You got to get green chili, red, green, or Christmas, right? That's what they say out there in New Mexico. They're putting something on. And, what if they could like get a little round robin going? I think with the SMU and TCU, are they not playing now? Because they had the skillet. I used to say the skillet. Yeah. That was practical. That's one of my favorite. There's a Bowling Green and Toledo just have the Interstate I-75 sign.
Yeah.
Like just in case.
No, it's the absolute best. Now, this is why it's the greatest sport in the world, because we're fighting over trophies that literally are just garbage. Like a lot of these trophies are just some. Right. It's like you go down to Goodwill, buy something, and put a plaque on it, and now it's a trophy. And now 200 young men go to war over it every Saturday. It's the greatest sport in the world.
If you think this sport is crazy now, the little brown jug between Minnesota and Michigan was created because Michigan brought their own water to the game because they felt Minnesota was poisoning them. So they had to bring their own water supply. No. So if you think we've lost our minds on this sport, now there are no poisonings. We just have guys dating each other's kids, dating the coach's kid, dating the linebacker, and he's puking all over the place. I don't know. What a sport.
It's the greatest.
That's going to do it for us. Pod will be back later this week. We'll see if Reese and Pete have worked off their respective hangovers from the big wedding. But thank you, gentlemen, and thank you all for listening to the College Game Day podcast. Please download the podcast wherever you prefer to get your podcast, or better yet, subscribe so you never miss a single episode we talk